Joining me now is the CEO at Citroen, that is Linda Jackson. She is soon to be a familiar name because remember, it was just a few days ago that the PSA Group announced its formal plans for India, which will see the Citroen brand debuting by the end of 2021 with its first cars coming into the market. And yes, the ambiguity, the curiosity, all the questions finally have answers in terms of which brand will front PSA's business in India. So let's talk about that and a lot more with Ms. Jackson. Thank you so much for speaking to us today and giving us your time. Really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Now, I have to start with a little bit of a personal question in the sense that before I get to the rest of it, your Twitter profile talks about it as well. You're a Brit in a French car company, so I'm curious to know, how did that happen?
How did it happen? Well, I've spent all my career in the automotive industry, and I've worked for UK companies as well as French companies. And to be honest with you, it just happened. And you know how these things happen. I was working in the UK in charge of Citroen, and I got asked by Carlos Tavares to come along and would I like to do this job. And that was 2014. So I've been doing this job now in my 5th year. And I've never regretted that decision. It's absolutely fantastic. And I think it's nice to get that sort of international flavour and the balance between, you know, what I always say, it's like French creativity, which is Citroen is full of, and then you get the pragmatism of Anglo-Saxons and the pragmatism and the order, and the two is a nice mixture. So, and hopefully it's doing well because the results are doing well.
All right, we have to now get to it. In India, there's been a lot of talk and curiosity, of course, about when will PSA finally come in. It's that one missing link when it comes to our market. A lot of talk about the Peugeot brand, maybe Opel, and of course Citroen. Now you finally have had that formal announcement, and you know, you've answered some of those questions. But you know, unlike those of us who track the sector very regularly, who know Citroen well enough, in India, a lot of people still don't know the brand. So who is Citroen?
I think first of all you have to know that Citroen is 100 years old. So actually 100 years old today, well today in this year, in 2019. And we've always been known for creativity and innovation throughout those 100 years. And today what we stand for is a unique design, a unique styling, which you can see as you go around the stand with the cars, linked with comfort, because comfort for us is absolutely essential. So those two elements, unique design and comfort, and accessibility for all. So we're at the heart of the market, and that for us is most important. So we have that differentiation. For the rest is that we try to balance something unique in terms of our styling and something comfort, because we spend so much time in our cars. We want to make sure that our cars are very comfortable, not only in seats and suspensions, but also, you know, about storage and all of these things that are so important for our everyday lives.
People in India are going to love that, I can tell you, because that's a huge part of buying decision. But the 100 years, I mean, of course it's a special anniversary. Of course, it's something that I think any car maker would always appreciate, reaching that great milestone. When you talk about what the cars represent today, the next 100 years, what's that going to be for the brand?
The next 100 years, well, I think we have to continue what we're doing, because, you know, if I go back to when we were first created, 1919, our owner by then was called André Citroën. He was the first person back in the 20s to advertise Citron on the Eiffel Tower, for example, something never been done before. And all the way through the years, we've tried to do things that are differently. So when we come to market, it's not just about our products, but it's also a modern way to come to the market, a modern way to talk to people. And basically, we're trying to make people's lives much easier. Digitalization is very important to us, connectivity. So for the next 100 years, well, we want to continue the saga. But as you know, everything changes. And you know, at the moment, everybody's talking about mobility and freedom and being able to have electric cars or whatever it may be. And we want to make sure that we've got innovative solutions for our customers, so that we've always got a solution for whatever period of time that you're in. So we just continue as we are. It's been very successful for 100 years, and I think it's going to be good if we keep reacting like we do for the next 100.
All right, before we get to everything else, we are here at the Geneva Motor Show, so tell us what you've brought to the show.
Okay, so there's on the stand, there's actually 3 parts of the stand. The first part is obviously showcasing our current range, which is completely new since 2014. So we've launched 6 models in the past 2 or 3 years. And we particularly are showcasing a range of vehicles which we call the limited edition called Origins to celebrate the 100 years. So first of all, you have the present, if you like, our new range. Then we have what we call the past, because we're very proud of our past and our heritage, our centenary, and so we've got a couple of vehicles that are really sort of icons from the past. And then we move into the third section, which is about the future. And we're showcasing a concept called AMI-1, which is a small urban object, a mobility object. It's only 2.5 meters long, it's 100% electric, you can drive it without a driving license, it doesn't go above a certain speed, so it's purely for urban cities, big cities, and very, very easy to park. So if you like, we're showing the current range, of course, ultra important for us to continue the success that we're having, the past, because that inspires us, and of course the future, we're talking about urban mobility and that freedom we all want to have.
There was a huge significance to the announcement that you just made. I mean, you've answered, like I said, a lot of those questions. But for you, internally, as a group, talk us through the significance or the importance of this India announcement.
Okay, so I mean, the significance for us is, first of all, the importance of the Indian market. It's an enormous market, and it's a growing market. So for Citroen, it's very important for us to become more international. And we are already in China, and we want to grow. And India is, as I say, probably going to be the third biggest market in the world in the future. So it's essentially very important for us to go there. But also it's very essential, and why did we choose Citroen, is because, for the group, is because Citroen has this positioning, which is being about a little bit different. In order to succeed in a very competitive market, you've got to have a differentiation. And Citroen's differentiation is about unique styling, it is about comfort, and it's about being at the heart of the market. So we believe that the Citroen positioning, which is working extremely well in Europe, for example, which is now being rolled out to other areas, is ideal for us to be able to go into India. And we will go into India, of course, with what we call a program of vehicles, which will be international vehicles, which will be eventually across a number of regions, but we start with India. And we call those vehicles of having very high integration. And what I mean by that is, obviously, they're going to be produced and assembled, and the powertrains are going to be made with parts from India, but also they're going to be inspired, because our signature is inspired by you, and we want to be inspired by Indians. So we want to make sure that what we're coming to the Indian market is right for the Indian customer. And that's exactly what we've done for Europe, it's exactly what we're now doing for China, and starting to do with China. And of course it's important that we use that same logic, that same strategy to go into India. So it's very important for us to understand the Indian market and make sure that we come with something that's different as well. Because we want to come with something different, but we want to come as an international brand, of course.
So let me clarify then, are we talking about cars or models that are going to be India specific in any way, or do we get to see your global portfolio, or will it be a mix of both those?
It's very, very important that these are going to be international models. So they will be international models, but of course there will be certain specifications that will be right for the Indian customers. What we don't want to do, and it's not our strategy, is to make vehicles only for India and then make some for anywhere else. We have what we call an international core model strategy. So our vehicles can be sold in more than 1, 2, 3 regions. And that's exactly what we're going to do with these vehicles, is that they will be available across a number of regions, and they will be international, and they will be that mix of unique design, unique styling, comfort, in whatever is appropriate for the markets, and obviously, as I say, right at the heart of the market. So it's not about making vehicles that are specifically for Indians, it's about making international vehicles, but making sure that they are adapted to what Indian customers want, which is the recipe that we've used in a number of other regions as we've started to launch vehicles.
I want to go back to what you talked about in the context of the group taking the decision that it will be Citroen coming to India. As a brand, as a separate business, did you sort of pitch for the Indian market as well internally?
To be honest with you, yes, because, I'll be absolutely honest, yes, because I want to grow Citroen, I want to make it more international, and I really truly believe that our positioning as being at the heart of the market, being close to the people on the street, is the right positioning, and I really do believe it. So yes, I was sort of sort of saying Citroen, Citroen, Citroen. But at the end of the day, it's a business decision. We've looked at it very, very carefully in terms of the opportunities, in terms of the volume and the profit opportunities. And after all that, Citroen did get it. But of course, I had a little bit of, please, can it be Citroen?
I'm secretly very happy, and I must give you a little personal aside because, when of course PSA first announced its intentions to come back to India, everybody started to discuss what it could be. This is even before the Opel news had happened. I think I was the only one saying, wouldn't it be just fantastic if we get Citroen, because it's so different, like you said. We don't have anything like that in the market. So yeah, you get my vote for sure. The point about the cars now, you mentioned, of course, that they have to be locally built. They have to be full of locally sourced content. How important is to get that just right with the very first product? How aggressive would you be to make sure that that's also done in an aggressive way?
Or when you say an aggressive way, I would call it more an efficient way. I prefer to use the word efficient. We need to make sure that these cars are obviously, when you are a brand that is at the heart of the market, you have to be efficient in everything. The way you make vehicles, the way you design vehicles, and the way you bring them to market. So rather than use the word aggressive, which I was not quite like, I prefer to be, we're going to be efficient when we come to the market. So that could be efficient in terms of a disruptive. It could be disruptive in the way that we come to the market, the way that distribution strategy could be, for example. But what we will make sure is that the vehicles are technologically correct, that they have technologies that are right for the Indian market. We'll make sure that they have, as I've just said, those elements of styling and comfort. We make sure that, of course, they're eco, there's in terms of meeting the CAFE 2022, etc. So we'll make sure all of those are right for when we come to the market. But I'm not quite sure what you mean when we go aggressive. I think more they're going to be efficient and they're going to be available at the right price at the heart of the market.
You also mentioned that you have to probably do things a little differently. It is a highly competitive market. So what about this whole digital journey that every brand seems to be on in the Indian context as well, especially when it comes to reaching out to the consumer, maybe the retail end of it? Will digital play a big role in your strategy?
I think you've got to, because as you quite rightly say, you've got to stand out. You've got to be different, and therefore you can't just be different about your products. You've got to be different about what are you bringing that's new to the market. What are you bringing that's away from the old traditional way? What is it that you can attract your customers? Because there are many brands and what have you. What have you got that's different? And therefore you have to extend that across the whole of the customer journey, and that means in terms of distribution as well. So yes, we'll be looking to do something disruptive on that as well.
Local sourcing, when I was talking about being aggressive, part of that was also to do with local content, just the sheer percentage of it that goes into the cars. How many of those relationships do you think come to you through the Hindustan Motors legacy, and how much of it has got to be new?
Well, of course, I think it'll be a combination of the two. The two joint ventures we've got. We've got one, as you know, we've got two, and one is for distribution, of course, and manufacture, and the other one, of course, is for powertrain. So you're absolutely right. It will be a combination. The idea is to get high local integration because, of course, that is the right way to go, and therefore potentially the powertrains also could be exported as well as being used. So to not quote percentages is not the game, but it is about having a very high local integration, local content that will enable us to be cost efficient. So of course it's very, very important, and of course some of that comes with the JV and the partner we've got, but of course it's also working together to be able to make sure that we can source those suppliers, and of course that's the work that is being done as we speak, as we go through until we eventually launch our vehicles by the end of 2021.
Could you give me some more detail about powertrain specifically? What's the overall boundary of that business operation going to be?
I think we've already quoted that there's something like a maximum of 300,000 powertrain across in a normal year. But of course, we'll go into a lot more detail when we get a lot closer, when we can tell you a little bit more about what we're going to be launching, etc., and become a lot clearer. But clearly, that's going to be a very important part, and that's the reason that we created a JV with Avtech.
Now, globally, we've seen that, and of course, in the Indian context, it's very true that it's the SUV, any size of SUV that seems to really, really do well. It hits the sweet spot in many ways across several markets. So while I can understand you're not going to tell me specific models that you're going to be bringing to India, though I'd love that, what cars then become sort of important? Is the SUV sort of a driver of growth for you anyway?
Yeah, I mean, certainly if we go outside of India and go across the world, you know, we've launched some what we call B segment cars, so and B SUV, highly successful, and of course the C SUV, the C5 Aircross. So I think, you know, across the B and C segments are really where we see across the world volume and what we call volume and profit pools, we call them, volume and profit opportunities. And I think wherever you go, that's evident, no matter where you go. From North, you know, from South America to China to India. So for us, certainly from a Citroen point of view, that's why we've launched the vehicles in the sequence that we have in Europe, for example. So we started with a B segment car, which is a C3. We've then moved on to our SUVs, a B SUV, which is a C3 Aircross, and a C SUV. Recognising, of course, the priority that you do these things is the priority of the segments. So I think that's probably true, and I think it's probably true of the Indian market.
Well, if the last few years have proved anything, it's a very tough market and there's a lot of pressure as well. But the one segment that seems to sort of defy all logic is the SUV, any shape or size. In India, we've seen huge growth rates for all of those segments. So is it safe to assume that you are obviously looking at that as well?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's what Citroen can bring to that SUV also with this element of comfort, which that is also quite an interesting one because, you know, in Europe, we're launching at the moment the C5 Aircross, and of course, we call it the most comfortable SUV. And why do we do that? Because it's very rarely that you hear the word comfort with an SUV. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is have that robustness of an SUV, but inside you've got the modularity, you've got the comfort that often you don't find. So we think this unique message of Citroen is quite clever, and of course, SUVs are exploding wherever you go in terms of size of markets.
All right, a couple of quick areas to talk about before we wrap up. Globally speaking, and not necessarily in the Indian context again, every car maker these days is talking about electrics. There's an EV strategy at play. What is that strategy for Citroen that's specific to Citroen, not necessarily as a group? And then does any of that have resonance in the Indian context?
We have a plan. So basically, we have PHEV, so plug-in hybrids, which will be coming on the C5 Aircross into Europe, into the world by next year. And then every vehicle that we launch from that point, every model that we will launch will have an electrified version, whether it PHEV or an electric version, as well as, of course, having a petrol and a diesel. So our strategy is to have vehicles that the customer has a choice about what type of engine they want.
Given the timing of your launch in India, when the vehicles first come out, does that take on a context for us as well? You think, you know, market should be ready by then?
I think you have to wait, and have a little patience until I can be able to tell you that. But of course, I think there's another question that we have to ask ourselves, and it's a question that we're asking ourselves in Europe, is that we are all in the rush to make sure we've got electric vehicles. You know, we're in that race too. So by 2025, all our vehicles will have an electrified version. But will the infrastructure be ready? And I think that's a question for Europe, and it's probably a question for India as well.
And with the same context, then DS for India as well. Is that a possibility, you think, in the future? Maybe not now, of course.
I think, you know, I mean, DS is our premium brand, and DS is currently in the progress, a plan of developing itself, because it's a very, very young brand, only you know, created as a brand in itself from 2014. So at the moment, the only brand going into India is Citroen. But of course, who knows? But I mean, I think we need to establish Citroen first.
How soon do we see you in India?
Oh, very, very shortly. Very, very shortly. In the next few weeks.
All right, that's something to look forward to. I hope to see you there as well.
It's been a pleasure.
Love your time today.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Appreciate it.